The meeting will not reconvene at 6:07 p.m. Legal counsel, will you provide a report during the regular council meeting?
Madam Mayor and members of the council, the record should reflect that the City Council and Successor Agency are now back in session, having met in closed session. With respect to the single item in closed session for the City Council agenda, the City Council received a briefing in the matter entitled City of Bell Gardens versus Jennifer Rodriguez, case number 20-STCB388848. We received briefing from outside legal counsel. Further direction was provided on a 4-to-1 vote with 4 ayes and 1 abstention, but no final action was taken. With respect to the single item appearing on the Successor Agency's closed session agenda, the Successor Agency received an update from the agency's negotiators and was provided feedback, but no final action was taken. That concludes my report for closed session.
If there is no objection by the City Council and Successor Agency, I will now adjourn the closed session meeting and Successor Agency meeting at 6:08. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, February 14, 2022, 6 p.m. regular meeting of the Bell Garden Successor Agency to the Community Development Commission. The meeting will now come to order. Pursuant to Assembly Bill 361, please be advised that members of the Bell Garden Successor Agency may participate in today's meeting telephonically. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If any agency member should have a conflict of interest virtually, please leave the room by turning off the video and muting yourself. You may still continue listening to the meeting. Tonight's invocation will be given by our chief, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by our Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, he was.
Okay. Pastor, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Councilman and Councilwoman and the rest of the team. It's always an honor to be with you. The Bible says in Psalms 16:11, you will show me the path of life. Let us pray. Remember, as we pray, we come into the presence of God. Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for our mayor and the councilmen and women. Father, thank you for each of the employees and the persons that are part of this team. Father, we bless them in your name. We declare your presence upon this meeting. May your spirit and your guidance be upon each one of them, Father. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Can we say amen?
Amen.
Thank you.
Please rise. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agency Secretary, will you please call the roll of the Successor Agency?
Yes, Chair. Agency members Marcena,
Present.
Cortez,
Present.
Flores,
Present.
Vice Chair Chavez,
Present.
and Chair Polito.
Present. We will now move to the first item on the agenda. Public participation is open. Agency Secretary, will you please announce the instructions for the public participation?
We have no written comments for this that were submitted for the agency. I'll go ahead and give the members of the public opportunity if they would like to speak on items listed on this agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the chair and agency members. Each speaker and written comment is limited to 3 minutes. Written comments will be read out loud after all speakers have been heard. Anyone wishing to make a comment may do so at the time by pressing *9. When instructed, press *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. I'll begin with the first speaker if there is any. It doesn't look like there's any comments for this item. There are no speakers. Mayor.
If there's no objection by the agency members, I will close public participation. We will now move to consent calendar. Does any member of the agency wish to pull an item for separate discussion? If there are no objections, I will move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
I'll go ahead and second.
Agency Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Okay, I will. Before we do that, I just have to let you know that for the approval of the minutes of the December 13th closed session successor agency, the recommendation read incorrectly, but we will, these are the minutes for the December 13th, 2021, just to let you know.
Roll call vote.
Agency members, Barcena?
Did they call my name?
Agency member Barcena,
Oh, thank you. And that's a yes.
Cortez,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chavez,
Yes.
and Chair Polito.
Yes. We will now move to public participation for non-agenda items. Public participation is now open. Agency Secretary, are there any speakers?
There are no written comments have been submitted. The members of the public will now have the opportunity to speak on items not listed on the agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the chair and agency members. Each speaker and written comment is limited to 3 minutes. Written comments will be read out loud after all speakers have been heard. Anyone wishing to make a comment may do so at the time by pressing *9. When instructed, press *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. So we'll go ahead and take comments if anybody's wanting to make comments. We'll begin with the first speaker. Hearing there's none, Mayor.
If there's no objection by the City Council, I will close public participation. Does any agency member wish to make a comment? If there's no objection by the successor agency, I will now adjourn the successor agency meeting at 6:15 and call to order the City Council meeting. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, February 14, 2022, 6 p.m. regular meeting of the Bell Garden City Council. The meeting will now come to order. Pursuant to Assembly Bill 361, please be advised that members of the Bell Garden City Council may participate in today's meeting telephonically. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If any City Council members should have conflict of interest virtually, please leave the room by turning off video and muting yourself. You may still continue listening to the meeting. City Clerk, will you please call the roll of the City Council?
Yes, Mayor. Council members Barcena,
Present.
Cortez,
Present.
Flores,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Present.
and Mayor Polito.
Present. Legal Counsel, will you please give the closed session report for the February 14, 2022 City Council and Successor Agency meeting?
The city council, as I reported earlier, met in closed session. As previously reported, the City Council met in closed session. City Council received a briefing on the matter entitled City of Bell Gardens versus Jennifer Rodriguez. From outside legal counsel, Gary Basio. Feedback was provided. Further direction was given on a 4-to-1 vote, but no final action was taken.
Thank you. We will now move to the presentation. City Manager, will you please introduce the presentations?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Polito. The first item listed is a Global Love Day proclamation that'll be moved to the month of May. The second one is a recognition for El Coraloense for their winning in a paella contest. Mayor, if you'd be willing to read the certificate, and then I'll turn it over at that time to Gus Roma, our Community Development Director. He can introduce El Coraloense. They're joining us via Zoom today.
On behalf of the City of Bell Gardens City Council, we take great pride in recognizing El Coraloense restaurant for receiving first prize in the International Paella Competition held in Spain in 2021 for the best international paella. Thank you for bringing fame to Bell Gardens and making your community proud. We wish you continued success in all of your future endeavors. We have a certificate right here.
Mayor, thank you so much for the recognition for Chef Natalie Curry and Chef Maria Curry from El Coraloense. We're so proud as a community to have them in our city. You know, I can tell you there's no better fish tacos out there than El Coraloense. We're all fans. And to hear of this famous paella is even better. I can't wait to try that. We have a short video that was put together. It was a YouTube video over in Spain. And we'd like to go ahead and show that and then give the microphone over to Chef Natalie and Chef Maria to tell us a little bit about everything that happened during that video. So if we can go ahead and show the video for now.
So you working on this? I'm listening.
I warn you, the video is going to make you hungry.
Y tengo un restaurante a nombre del Coraloense en la ciudad de Bell Gardens. Hoy estamos haciendo la paella y estamos muy emocionadas por ser parte de este concurso, así que día a día. Lo que intentando hacer es traer la paella tradicional a Estados Unidos para que la gente la conozca como es la paella tradicional de Valencia. Allá mucha gente usa el arroz que no es correcto, que es lo más importante. Usan arroz precocido o de grano largo, entonces eso es un poquito difícil. Ay, perdón, que me está
No, por favor.
Pero sí, aparte de eso, pues nomás estamos tratando de enseñarle a todos lo que es la paella valenciana tradicional.
¿Y la carne? Porque yo, según tengo entendido, yo no lo sé. El conejo allí es un animal que además es un animal de compañía. ¿Hay alguna dificultad con eso?
Sí. Ay.
No te...
Sí, lo que hacemos es en vez de conejo le ponemos puerco, costillas de puerco, porque a muchas personas no le gusta comer conejo por lo que comentó usted, que son animales acompañantes, y a muchas personas pues no. Entonces cambiamos el conejo por el... Los mejores ingredientes del mundo, pero si la técnica no está bien, pues no sale bien la paella.
Usted es aquí de Valencia, ¿no?
No, yo soy de Estados Unidos, de Los Ángeles. Sí.
Americana entonces.
Americana, sí, mexicana también. Allá tenemos un restaurante de mariscos que se llama El Coraloense, estilo Sinaloa y Nayarit.
Sí, ¿y hacen paellas también allí?
También hacemos paellas de mariscos y muchas valencianas para caterings, que se dice, eventos, sí.
Imagino que hay una gran colonia española, ¿no?
Sí, pero también lo que nosotros estamos tratando de hacer es enseñar a la gente lo que es la verdadera paella valenciana, porque allá se usa muchas paellas diferentes.
Sí.
Y nos gustaría enseñar a las personas lo que es una paella valenciana verdadera.
Bueno, pues nada, Natalie, te deseamos mucha suerte en este mundial de la paella. Gracias por atendernos.
Muchísimas gracias y nos vemos en Los Ángeles.
Eso, claro.
¿Todo queda bien o qué?
Molt bé. Estic donant unes culleres de pedra.
¿Todo queda bien o qué?
Well, Chef Natalie and Chef Maria, thank you so much for that presentation. Sorry we had to edit the video a little bit. It was a little over 10 minutes. So we just had to fit it into the presentation. But again, it gives us great pride to have you here today and to be able to recognize you. I'll now turn it over to our mayor and council.
Thank you. Do any of you colleagues have a comment? I'd like to make a brief comment.
Congratulations, ladies. this is amazing. I'm sure you guys know I frequent your restaurant. You guys are amazing. Can't believe that you guys won. Congratulations. You guys serve amazing seafood, but not only that, you also serve amazing, authentic paella. If you guys did not know, one of our colleagues, when Marco, myself, and Councilwoman Cortez got elected, it is your paella that we served at our swearing-in ceremony for all of our guests to eat. And we're very proud. So thank you for being here in our city. And most importantly, I always say that food is like traveling. I love food. It transports me to places. And you're bringing that to our city and serving us quality stuff. So thank you, ladies. Congratulations. Keep on pushing. Es un orgullo tenerlas aquí, especialmente siendo mexicanas. Así es que síganle dando y aquí estamos para apoyarlas. Felicidades.
If I may, Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to congratulate Chef Maria and Natalie for providing our residents with such an amazing restaurant. As Council Member Flores mentioned, when we got elected, not too long before that, I had gone to El Coraloense and I had some of the fish tacos. So I knew that it was a really, really good restaurant. However, little did I know that the best thing would be the paella, which is what they brought to our first meeting when we actually got elected. So great memories, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are still doing an amazing job. And I also want to give props to the person that put the music in your video, because I was trying really hard not to start dancing in my seat. But yeah, great job. Congratulations.
Thank you guys so much. We really, really appreciate all the love. Thank you guys for supporting our small business and for having us here today.
Again, thank you so much. When I found out that you had won, I told people outside of Bell Gardens I was showing off as if the paella had been prepared by myself, because it's such a great accomplishment. I have tried to prepare paella before, and the bottom layer of it just kind of like got stuck. So I know that it's a real art to get this to taste good, to have the right texture, and to season it correctly. So this is such a great accomplishment. We're so proud and grateful that you're in Bell Gardens. And I know that this is one of many victories that your restaurant will have, because you do have delicious food, and this is just amazing. Thank you so much for being part of our family and our community.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll make sure that you get this soon.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Every Sunday, we actually have paella at the restaurant. So I would like to formally invite every single one of you here today. If you could make it on a Sunday at 12:30, we have the paella valenciana ready. I'll be more than happy to, share a plate with you guys, so you could come and see the location, because we have recently remodeled as well. And the paella is one of the few awards that we won. We have fortunately made it in 101 best restaurants in the LA Times for the past 2 years. So, we're very, very fortunate to be part of this community. And thank you guys so much for supporting our small business.
Big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Now for the next presentation.
Yes, Mayor Polito. The next item is a proclamation recognizing February as Black History Month.
So I have a proclamation right here. Each February, National Black History Month serves as both a celebration and a powerful reminder that Black history is American history. Black culture is American culture, and Black stories are essential to the ongoing story of America. That is why we want to declare February as Black History Month. We have it right here. Do we have any comments? We will now begin with the first item on the agenda. At this time, I will open the public hearing at 6:31. City Manager, will you please announce? Oh, yes. Will you please announce this item?
Thanks again, Mayor Polito. This item is the final draft of the housing element of the general plan and a proposed initial study negative declaration. As the public hearing's open, I will turn it over to Gus Romo, our Community Development Director, to lead a presentation to provide further information, and then we'll receive public input, council member comments, et cetera. Please take it away, Gus.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mayor and members of the City Council, this is the final draft of the 2021-2029 cycle for the housing element update. The city, as always, is on time, thanks to our wonderful consultant and her team, Veronica Tam. I'd like to say that we've had no controversy whatsoever with this element. We've had public comments that were provided during the public workshops, as well as the Planning Commission meeting that took place just recently. Planning Commission took those comments into account and ultimately went ahead with a recommendation for approval. So I'll go ahead and turn this over to our consultant, Veronica Tam.
Thank you, and good. Can we move on to the next slide? Great. Oops. For tonight's presentation, we wanted to hopefully bring this project into closure. What we wanted to give tonight in the presentation is an overview of what's the housing element, what are some of the basic requirements for the benefit of some of the audience if they had not participated in or hear the presentation before during the last year or so. We then want to talk a little bit about the, giving you an overview of what the update process has been and some of the key components of the housing element. And lastly, we want to go through what the state's comments on relating to the housing element when we submitted the housing element to the state for review, and also the environmental review process. And lastly, just to give an idea about what would be the next steps to finish the housing element project, hopefully. Next slide. The housing element is part of the general plan, is one of the required elements. I understand that following this public hearing is another housing element, is another element of your general plan that's been, that has a public hearing, but there are a total of 8 requirements and housing is one of that. When we look at the housing element, we look at the needs in the community and what would be the most, the best way within your resources and constraints to meet the needs of your residents. The housing element is a little different from the rest of your general plan, that it only covers 8 years. It has a statutory requirement in terms of deadline for the 6th update of the housing element. We are dealing with a deadline of October 15, 2021, and it does have a grace period of 120 days. What it also is different from the rest of the general plan is that the housing element has to be reviewed by a state agency for compliance with state law. The agency responsible for that is the State Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD. Next slide. The housing element is fairly complex, and it does require a longer time frame in terms of updating it. We initiated the update back in June 2020. It's due to the pandemic, things got a little slow start, and then we held a workshop on February 17, the first community workshop to talk about housing needs in the city of Bell Gardens. During all that time, we were working with staff to develop the draft housing element. It became available for public review on August 17, between August 17 and October 29, and we submitted the draft housing element. Actually, we held a second workshop with the community to review the draft housing element on August 25th, and then submitted the housing element to the state for review for a 60-day review on September 9th, and we heard back from the state right at this end of the 60-day mark. We got a comment letter from the state, and what we are required to do is to address the comments from the state to their satisfaction. And so during that time between December and January, we've been working with the staff and also with the environmental clearance consultant to make sure that we address the comments and put the revised housing element available for public review. So back on January 19, we were able to present the draft housing element to the Planning Commission and with the recommendation for City Council approval. And so tonight we're hoping for the adoption of the housing element so we can submit the adopted housing element to the state. Next slide. When we submit the draft housing element to the state for review, a key component of that review is the city's ability to meet the regional housing needs assessment, RHNA. For the 6th cycle housing element, we have been assigned a regional housing needs assessment of 503 units divided into income categories: lower income, moderate income, and above moderate income. And we're able to take credit for projects that are in the pipeline, are approved and entitled. And we can also project the trend of accessory dwelling units into the future. So far, there hasn't been an exceptionally robust ADU kind of trend in the city of Bell Gardens, mainly because you're very built out in your residential neighborhood. So we haven't seen a lot of ADUs yet. We were also able to reuse a couple of sites back from the 5th cycle housing element. Your 5th cycle RHNA, regional housing needs assessment, was much smaller. It didn't require a lot of sites, but there were 2 sites that are that we identified back in the 5th cycle housing element that remained vacant, and we're able to use that again for the 6th cycle. But we have to identify additional sites to meet your much larger RHNA this time, 503 units. And so much of your regional housing needs allocation for moderate and above moderate income are going to likely to be coming from the recycling of some of your existing non-residential sites in your mixed use areas. So the city is one of the housing element programs is to make sure that your development standards for your mixed use sites are feasible for facilitating housing development in the future. But a lot of your moderate and above moderate income sites, primarily probably going to be in condos and townhomes, are going to be developed as either mixed use projects or in recycling non-residential uses. There is an affordable housing project that is underway at 5600 Shoal Street. That is one of the properties that the city recently is going through a disposition process and negotiating with a developer in order to provide affordable housing. Based on the proposal, we anticipate 40 lower income units and 58 moderate income units from that project. But all that are not yet able to completely fulfill the city's regional housing needs allocation yet, particularly for the lower income RHNA. And so some rezoning is going to require the city identify 2 properties for rezoning. These are existing industrial uses that have been either vacated or primarily vacant. And so those will be rezoned into residential development in the future. With all these different components, the city will be able to meet its regional housing needs assessment for the 6th cycle. Next slide. Here is just a map to show where the sites are. The mixed-use properties, the city's mixed-use zoning is existing, and it covers a very large area. But in order to make sure that we identify the sites that are more feasible in the future, we've narrowed it down to some of the uses that may look a little bit older and independently owned, and with large, largely underutilized properties. The mixed-use properties that we have identified represent probably less than 10 or 15% of your overall mixed-use zoning. In terms of the R3 sites that were not in the, that were proposed for rezone, those are in the green area. Those are primarily, and those sites are identified for rezone. And there's one property that were back in the 5th cycle. I think that's actually, we identified some additional are 3 sites that were not in the 5th cycle, but still looks like it's currently vacant that can be used. But this generally shows that we try to, even though it's difficult because the city is primarily built out, we try to identify sites that are in different parts of the city in order to meet your regional housing needs allocation. Next slide. When we sent the city this housing element for the state for review, it came back with comments, particularly focusing on the whole idea about affirmatively furthering fair housing, because that is a new change in state law and probably most significant change in state housing element law. And so what we have done is definitely expanded the discussions in the affirmatively furthering fair housing chapter, which is Appendix D, to address HCD's comments and to make sure that we look at the sites inventory again in a more in the lens of a equity and distribution, and why we're locating sites in some of the commercial corridors. We also added a program 16 for the consideration of rent stabilization or rent control. That is a new program to reflect some of the affirmatively furthering fair housing issues, particularly focusing on tenant protection. The state also asked us for more information about the sites inventory. We have expanded the narrative of the sites inventory and provided more detailed information about the sites. Next slide. The state asked for some comments about the city's cumulative impacts in terms of development standards. Again, we have expanded discussion on the city's parking requirements, on and off sites requirements, and also typical findings for site plan review. One comment relates to housing for persons with disability. The state wants the city to really expand the discussion on how the process of requesting reasonable accommodation. Also a program to address residential care facilities for 7 or more persons. Those changes have been made to the draft housing element. Next slide. And then finally, the last set of comments focus on programs, making sure that our programs are more have more specific timeline and outcomes if possible. And so there are some specific requirements on facilitating affordable housing, disposition of the city-owned properties, and also programs to address homeless and emergency shelters and ADUs. So those are all, those programs have all been revised and expanded in the housing element. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Curtis, who is the city's environmental consultant for the housing element, and he's going to talk a little bit about the secret process for the housing element. Curtis?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. My name is Curtis Zacuto, and I'm principal with EcoTR Consulting and project manager for the Housing Element Update and CEQA documentation project. We prepared on behalf of the city an initial study to determine if the proposed 2021-2029 draft housing element would have a significant impact on the environment, and that was prepared pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15063. The initial study concluded that there are no significant effects on the environment, resulting in the support of the negative declaration, which was prepared again pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15070. The initial study / negative declaration was made available for public review from December 16th, 2021 through January 14th, 2022. Again, that was pursuant to section 15073 of the CEQA guidelines. Finally, we have prepared a notice of determination that will be based on tonight's decision, February 15th, 2022. Next slide, please. So during the public review period, we received 2 comment letters, and then outside the public review period, we received a 3rd comment letter. 2 of those 3 comment letters were from public agencies. The first comment letter received was from the State Department of Transportation, Caltrans. That letter was dated December 28th, 2021. Essentially, that letter reiterated the project description and stated that the future projects from the housing element would be analyzed using the new vehicle miles traveled metric to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips and reduce vehicle miles traveled. Also, the letter stated that future projects should evaluate potential transportation demand management strategies to better manage the transportation network and to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips and reduction in vehicle miles traveled. So essentially, there were no comments on the draft initial study itself, and so therefore no CEQA response was required. The second letter received during that time period was from the East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice, a private entity, and that letter provided comments on the housing element regarding public participation, the RENA numbers, the inventory and identification of sites and recreation and public services. Regarding CEQA, the letter requested an EIR be prepared instead of an ISND, as the commenter viewed these sites as proposed development. The housing element is a general plan policy document that addressed housing need in the city, so no actual development or rezoning or redesignation of land is proposed. The housing element includes an inventory of sites that are adequate to accommodate the city's share of regional housing needs, but does not propose development of projects. Future development proposals will require additional environmental review. And that statement I just would want to reiterate was mentioned throughout the initial study negative declaration. So during the comment period, there were no additional comments that received. The city did receive an additional comment from the Los Angeles County Fire Department, and that letter was dated January 24th, 2022. Since no development is proposed, and this is an initial study analysis on the housing element, a policy document, the fire department just iterated that the future project developments must comply with all applicable code and ordinance requirements for construction, access, water main, fire flows, and fire hydrants. Also, the letter stated that future projects must comply with the Los Angeles County Oak Tree Ordinance regarding any cutting, destroying, removing, or relocating any oak trees. Again, this comment letter did not make any direct comments on the initial study, and therefore no CEQA response was required. And that concludes my part of the presentation. Thank you.
Next slide. So the next steps involving the housing element is for the City Council to open public hearing to consider adoption of the 6th cycle 2021 to 2029 draft housing element for Bell Gardens. And then if adopted, we will submit the adopted housing element to the state for their final review of the adopted housing element and pursue certification of the housing element. Next slide. So it is staff's recommendation to open the public hearing on the final draft of the general plan housing element update and initial study negative declaration, receive public input and close public hearing and deliberate on the acceptance of the final draft housing element. And if accepted, adopt resolution 2022-09 for the final housing element and approving the CEQA initial study and negative declaration. With that, we conclude staff presentation.
We will now move to council member comments. Does any member of the city council wish to make a comment? We will now, yes.
City manager, if there's a possibility for an amendment to be made for this, is that something that could be doable? I'm currently working with another group that could potentially gain from, we can probably gain from them through this housing element project. So I want to make sure that if we approve it today and it moves forward, that we can bring it back for amendments if necessary.
I will look to legal counsel for clarification here. So I know we've got our public hearing. It sounds like the council member would be asking for some potential amendments to this document. Can you talk about the process that would ensue if she were to either table the item potentially or to make a specific recommendation, and then how we would move ahead going forward?
If I may, Mr. City Manager, this is Lloyd Pilchin with the City Attorney's Office. So what can you hear me?
We can hear you, Lloyd. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So what I'm hearing from the council member is, in the future, can a housing element or any element of the general plan be amended? The easy answer to that is yes. The amendments to a general plan can be made. It requires recommend review by the Planning Commission and ultimately adoption by the City Council. There's a process for it, and the number of times that a general plan can be amended is limited to a certain number of times during the year, but it's possible. So I'm not sure that's what I heard from the council member was.
That was perfect. That answers my question, yes.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Quick question.
Yes.
So would we be able to bring back the housing element and make a change to it?
Yeah.
If I can clarify from the Mayor Pro Tem, just the question, if when you say bring it back and make a change to it, you mean if it were, if the recommendations, if the council took the staff recommendations now, went through the rest of the process, could you bring back the housing element at a later date after this process is completed? Okay, I was just clarifying that. Thank you.
So I want to make sure we're not confusing the idea of this approval tonight, because what's on the agenda is to move this draft housing element forward and submit it to the State Housing and Community Development for ultimately for adoption. So we are talking about two separate things. There's slowing down this process, which Gus explained we're on schedule for this because the city is under state mandates about when a new housing element must be approved. But the council certainly has the power to continue this item and suggest any further changes or anything the council likes. If it's substantial changes, it may have to go back to Planning Commission. So that's how this tonight's agenda item could be slowed down. It could be continued. It could be continued indefinitely. The council does not have to approve it tonight. But the first question was, in the future, could this housing element be changed and could it be added to? Could it be adjusted? And the answer is definitely. General plans are often amended.
And Lloyd, if I may add, what we're looking for is an adoption tonight so that we can go ahead and get final HCD certification and have this process completed. If this does get continued for any reason, staff would like the reasons why so that we can identify what you believe is needed in that housing element. So we would like to find out what is it, for what reasons would you want to continue it, if that is the case.
And Gus, I think to clarify, so just to kind of sum it up, I think we're still recommending the adoption of this housing element update, and that if there are further changes or discussion that need to occur to potentially amend after this is adopted, that's what staff's recommendation is currently.
Yes, thank you.
We will now open public comments for this item. City Clerk, please announce the instructions for public participation.
There are no written speakers, no written comments that have been submitted, Mayor. The members of the public will now have the opportunity to speak on the public hearing item number 1. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the mayor and city council. Each speaker and written comment is limited to 3 minutes. Written comments will be read out loud after all speakers have been heard. Anyone wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by pressing *9 when instructed. Press *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand featured on Zoom. I'll begin with the first speaker. This particular person has been contacted. She raised her hand, but she wants to speak under non-agenda items. So at this time, we have no public speakers unless somebody calls, which they haven't.
Okay. If there's no objection by the city council, I will close public participation. If there are no further comments or questions from the city council, I will now close the public hearing at 6:57. May I have a motion?
Move Cortez.
Second, Barcena.
We have a motion. Councilmember Cortez and a second by Councilmember Barcena. City Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Cortez,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Yes.
and Mayor Polito.
Yes. We will now begin with the first item on the agenda. At this time, I will open the public hearing at 6:58. City Manager, will you please introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Perlito. So this is the final draft general plan circulation and transportation element update and proposed initial study negative declaration. So similar to the process that we just went through regarding the housing element, this is for the circulation and transportation element. So we'll open a public hearing and then we'll end up receiving public input, councilmember comment, close the public hearing. At this time, I will turn it over to Grisel Chavez, our Director of Public Works, to introduce a presentation for this item. Thanks, Grisel.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. This evening, staff presents the updated circulation and transportation element update, which had not been updated since 1995. The city was able to secure a Caltrans grant for $188,500 to complete the update before you. Total project cost was almost $244,000, with the balance of it being from Transit Development Act and general funding. 3 consultants were hired to develop this update for the city. KOA Corporation, who is on the call this evening, who will make the presentation, prepared the actual update. Avant-Garde prepared the community outreach activities, grant funding administration, and project management. And lastly, De Novo Planning Group, who is also on the call in case council has any questions, completed the environmental compliance CEQA review processes. Attached for council's review and consideration this evening is the final draft of the element, which essentially serves as a blueprint for establishing an enhanced transportation network in our city for more convenient, safe, and sustainable transportation for all users, from the bicyclists to pedestrians, for those riding the public bus system, to drivers, of course. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Carlos Velasquez with KOA, who will be sharing his screen to provide to review the PowerPoint. Thank you, Carlos. Carlos, you are muted. Can you unmute, please?
Can you hear me now? Yeah, great. So good evening, members of the City Council, Honorable Mayor. My name is Carlos Velasquez. I'm a Managing Director and Senior Planner here at KOA Corporation. And we had the privilege of working with Grisel and her team to prepare the circulation element update. So I have a lot of material to cover. I'll be pretty brisk, but if you have any questions or need me to elaborate on anything else, I can certainly do that during council member comment. So what's the purpose of the circulation element? Well, in this case, the purpose really is to really develop a vision for the city's transportation infrastructure and really identify what are the needs for the city and what are ways that we can update the 1995 document, bring it up to best practices that are currently going on in the industry, and ensure that we set the city up for a sustainable and effective transportation system for the next 20 years. A little bit about your city, which I'm assuming you know this better than I do. The city is a little over 40,000 residents. Household income is on the lower end compared to other parts of LA County, about $42,000. About 4% of the city's population has a bachelor's degree, which tends to be lower than the average in LA County. And you have about a 4.7% unemployment rate. Overall, what I want to establish here is that, as you very well know, the city is a working class community. It has a lot of residents that depend on active transportation, on moving, getting to work via bus, and sometimes the personal vehicle attainment is a little lower. So that's sort of the context that we're working in here. As I mentioned, about 77% of the city drives alone, with about 11% carpooling, 5% taking the bus, 2% walking, and then about 2% is other. So it's largely still single vehicle occupancy dependent, but this plan is going to set to change that. Currently, the city has a very traditional sort of transportation infrastructure layout. A lot of your main streets are categorized as major highways. So Eastern, Garfield, Florence tend to be classified as major highways. This is a very traditional, typical way of doing street hierarchy in cities. And our plan is going to look at updating some of these naming conventions, which I'll explain a little later. We also looked at safety, traffic safety, and vehicle collisions. And as you can see here, where it's a little more pronounced in yellow, that's where there's a higher density of collisions. And what this shows is that your major streets, Eastern, Florence, Garfield, tend to have the highest number of collisions or density of collisions. So these are areas that we want to certainly improve and have the circulation element really improve conditions here for residents. We have mapped here on the left. We show transit services in the city. It's pretty well served by numerous transit agencies, and we're going to look at how we can improve some of that. On the right side, we show active transportation facilities. Right now, the city mostly has what are called Class 3 bicycle routes, also known as sharrows. We have several of those in our team, and this plan is going to seek to continue improving your active transportation infrastructure. Next, I'll touch a little bit on process and namely community engagement. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we weren't able to do in-person meetings. So what we did is we did a set of virtual meetings. We set up a project website, which you see on the left. We also, in that website, we embedded an interactive map that allowed people to provide input on which areas in the city they want to improve and are of most need. We also developed a community outreach survey where we asked your residents questions on what is it that they would like to see in the city and what are some of their comments regarding some of the recommendations that we laid out. And that shows that. So overall, most of your residents want to see more bicycle and pedestrian facilities. They also want to see more rail transit. It seems here that about 80% of your residents would be more than likely to use the trolley more, the city's circulator shuttle, the trolley. If it was more of an on-demand service, kind of serving as like an Uber, Lyft type of service. 80% of your residents would also be more likely to use to bike if there were more facilities or more safe facilities for these. So there were also some barriers like sidewalks, lack of shade, things like that. But overall, there is a thirst by your residents to improve the transportation infrastructure in your city. But what are some of the recommendations? Split this into 4 categories. The first category I'll talk about is street. So our first main recommendation is to update the naming conventions for those street classifications. As I mentioned, right now you have a very typical way of naming streets, so we want to update that. We also want to, the second main goal here is to implement your award-winning 2020 Complete Streets Master Plan. This plan has already received funding, which the city will be implementing several aspects of it, but there's a lot of good information in that plan to continue implementing and improving your transportation portfolio. And lastly, adopt policies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve safety, and facilitate transportation equity. Here, what you see is a list of how we would update the naming conventions of your streets. So major highway would become boulevard, secondary highway would become avenue. This is just bringing your circulation element up to best practices currently in the industry. This is how that classification map would look. We're not really changing much here. We're just sort of updating the naming conventions to bring it up to standard now. These are just excerpts from your 2020 Complete Streets Plan. Again, the goal here is to look at implementing that. The Complete Streets Plan had a lot of bicycle lanes that were recommended, road diets, ways to improve safety and access for your residents. And so the circulation element makes an emphasis to implement the Complete Streets Plan. Next category is transit. Several goals here, but I'm just going to highlight a few. First is looking at converting the town trolley into more of an on-demand service. I'll discuss that in the next slide. Overall, there is a thirst for connecting the city to higher quality transit facilities nearby. So, for example, Gold Line Station or the proposed West Santa Ana branch that's going to have a station in the city of Southgate and one in Huntington Park. So ways to connect to those. Provide electric car share services so that people don't have to own a car to run some of their errands, and providing van pooling services and other policies that, again, improve access and comfort for people who use transit. This image shows an example of an on-demand trolley service. This is in the city of LA, the LA Now shuttle. Again, the way this works is that there's several stops located in a certain service area, and so people provide our access the trolley through that. And here we identified some potential options to increase transit service in the city. Next category is active transportation. Again, one of this is to implement the 2020 Complete Streets Plan. Also increase opportunities for connectivity and access to really good infrastructure that the city has nearby, such as the LA River Bikeway, the Rio Hondo Bikeway as well, and improve access to parks and other city facilities. And again, adopt policies and programs to increase safety and connectivity to these locations. This is an excerpt map from the Complete Streets Plan. Again, this shows what the active transportation would look like if fully implemented per the Complete Streets Plan. And lastly, the category is about parking. Again, there's several recommendations. I'm just going to touch on some main ones. Mainly, identify shared parking opportunities as part of the city's policy. So what I mean by this is we understand that the city has quite a bit of a demand for on-street parking. A lot of your neighborhoods are overparked. So one creative way of dealing with this is identifying what's called shared parking opportunities. Identify land uses that don't have as high of a demand during, say, the evening and weekend hours when a lot of your residential on-street parking is at highest of demand, and potentially work out deals where some of that space can be used for parking, and just make the best use of what you already have there versus creating new parking elsewhere. We understand the city has several parking programs such as preferential parking districts and T markings. So we want to recommend to expand the public awareness of these programs, as some of these programs can help facilitate and improve on-street parking conditions in neighborhoods. Lastly, provide electric vehicle charging stations in commercial corridors for those, just to incentivize the use of those vehicles. This image shows some potential shared parking opportunities located throughout the city. Again, these are lots that have a lot of parking that might not be used during peak hours for on-street parking during like weekends and nights. And I'll put it on to Gustavo to talk about environmental.
Carlos, thank you for that. I apologize. Are you able to describe any more detail in regards to the community survey? The community survey and then the recommendation survey? The types of questions that were requested and the feedback solicited from both of those?
Yeah, do you want me to address that now or?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, I'll go to that slide. Okay, yeah, so we had two workshops, two virtual workshops. The first workshop took place in March of 2021, and in that we included a community outreach survey where we asked questions, namely focusing on what is it that people want to see as part of the city's transportation future. So this was more of a visioning exercise to really understand what is it that the community needs. So we asked questions such as, what are some of the major issues that the city has with transportation right now? What would you like to see? Would you like better access to transit, more bicycle and pedestrian facilities? What are some of the major barriers? So it was mostly big picture questions, and I could certainly share some of those questions after the meeting, but for the sake of the meeting, I'm just sort of speaking on sort of at a high level. So those were the main questions, and the purpose of those questions really were to again get an understanding of what are the priorities that the city's residents want. Again, the circulation element is more of a bigger picture visioning document. It really sets the groundwork for where the city's future is going to be over the next 20-25 years. So it's not meant to be super specific, like say your complete streets plan is, that actually identifies specific improvements on a more granular level. This document is more establishing the vision and laying the groundwork for setting up plans like the complete streets plan. After that, we had a second workshop in the summer of 2021, and this one actually asked your residents more pointed questions about the actual recommendations. So the recommendations that I actually presented now were presented in the survey to your residents. So we asked, for example, with streets, what are some of the major issues on some of these streets? Are you would you like to see more bicycle facilities on your streets? Would you like more increased access to transit facilities like the Gold Line, Metrolink, the proposed West Santa Ana branch project that's going to be coming nearby? So we asked sort of those questions. We asked about the parking, preferential parking district. What are the thoughts on that? So those are the types of questions that we asked during the second workshop. I believe that, let me know if that answers your question, Grisel.
Thank you, Carlos. It does. And for council's additional information, the first community survey, we had 26 responses, and the second one was 5 for a total of 31. I think a total of 34 residents actually viewed the online workshop. There was a postcard mailed out to all the addresses in the city with the website link. This was, I think, back in March, April, around that time.
Yes.
And Carlos, I will move on now to environmental review where you left off. So similar to what council heard about from the housing element prior to this item, a de novo planning group conducted an initial study to determine if the proposed circulation and transportation element update would have a significant environment impact. And this was done in accordance with the CEQA guidelines as noted on the screen before you. The initial study analysis concluded there was no significant effect on the environment, which resulted in preparation of a negative declaration, also in accordance with CEQA guidelines. This was made available for 30-day public review period from December 16th through January 14th. And we did actually receive 2 comment letters. One was from LA County Fire and from Caltrans, who made similar comments where there was concluding with the findings that there was no significant impact on the environment, and asking that the city follow any county code guidelines and follow the vehicle miles traveled metrics, et cetera, to evaluate future transportation impacts on future development projects. And as of last Thursday, I think it was, there was no additional comments made from the public. So at this time, staff would recommend that the, let me go back. The Planning Commission also heard this item at the January 19th Planning Commission meeting, at which point the Planning Commission approved bringing this, the initial study negative declaration and the proposed transportation circulation element update before the City Council for review and consideration. So with that, staff would recommend City Council open the public hearing on the final draft of the general plan transportation and circulation element update and the initial study negative declaration, receive public input and close public hearing, and followed by the adoption of the attached resolution adopting both the element update and the CEQA initial study negative declaration. And that concludes our presentation, but we're available to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Do any members of the City Council have questions or comments?
I'd just like to make a comment. At the beginning, you stated, Crystal, that this had not been updated since 1995. Is that correct? What is the consistency of which this document should be updated? Is that per se normal?
Carlos, please correct me, but I believe it's every 7 years. It should be updated.
It depends. It's not as it's not as like strict as like the housing element. I've seen circulation elements that are at about 20 years update. Others happen a little sooner. It really depends on the city, and typically this is done as part of like the general plan update. So typically cities update like their entire general plan, all like the housing, land use, circulation elements. They do those all together, but that can cost up to $1 million at times. So this one, the city was awarded this grant, and that's why they're updating that the circulation element now. But typically, yeah, it can be between 7 to about 15 years or so, just because a lot of these projects have a long lead time. You know, the cities usually don't get funding very often. And so especially for some of the bigger projects. So it's meant to be a longer term vision, and to ensure that the city's set up for the next 20 or so years of their transportation infrastructure.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Well, on that note, 27 years later, I'm really happy that we're going to be adopting this today. I'm sorry that we're going to be putting this forward. Thank you so much, Crystal, and to all of the parties that participated in this. The report looks like it's very thoroughly put together, and there's still a lot more that I've not seen, but I'm excited for the future. This is this element is very important for our residents and to their quality of life. So with that, if nobody else has any comments, I'd like to go ahead to motion to close public.
Actually, we'll open public comments first. Yes.
Okay.
So we will now open public comments for this item. City Clerk, please announce the instructions for public participation.
We have 0 written comments. The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on the public hearing item number 2. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the mayor and council members. Each speaker and written comment is limited to 3 minutes. Written comments will be read out loud after all speakers have been heard. Anyone wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by pressing *9. When instructed, press *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. And there are no speakers at this time that have raised their hand.
If there's no objection by the city council, I will close public participation. If there's no further comments or questions by council members, I will now close public hearing at 7:21 p.m. Now may I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and motion to approve.
I'll second that, Chavez.
We have a motion by council member Flores and the second by Mayor Pro Tem Chavez. City clerk, will you please conduct roll call?
Council members, Barcena,
Yes.
Cortez,
City Clerk Halsted, just make a note that Councilmember Cortez had to leave the meeting at 7:02 p.m.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Council members Flores,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Yes.
and Mayor Polito.
Yes. We will now move to the next item on the agenda. Public participation is now open for the items listed on the agenda. City clerk, will you please announce the instructions for public participation?
Okay, we have 0 written comments have been submitted. The members of the public will now have the opportunity to speak on items listed on the agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the city council. Each speaker and written comment is limited to 3 minutes. Written comments will be read out loud after all speakers have been heard. Anyone wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by pressing *9. When instructed, press *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. I'll begin with the first speaker. Host, can you please unmute Joy Harns? She had requested to speak earlier.
Madam Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. For those of you who don't know, I am the General Counsel for the Bicycle Hotel and Casino, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the Council this evening. First, let me start by thanking and recognizing the City of Bell Gardens for almost 40 years of collaboration with the Bicycle Hotel and Casino, resulting in increased opportunities for both the card room and the residents of the city. We now find ourselves at a point where we once again need to work together to protect what we have built and what we want to preserve for the city and its residents, as well as the business and the employees of the card room. Agenda item number 8 on tonight's consent calendar addresses a substantial threat to the card room and to the city's revenue. The California Legalized Sports Betting on American Indian Lands initiative is one of several proposed gaming-related initiatives for the November 2022 statewide ballot. In short, it would legalize retail sports wagering at tribal casinos and certain licensed racetracks. But it is a Trojan horse of sorts. While the constitutional changes to allow sports wagering and expanded gambling in tribal casinos are what has and will continue to be advertised, the measure also includes a Private Attorneys General Act, or PAGA, provision that is unrelated to the main subject of the overall initiative and sets a very dangerous precedent that will undoubtedly lead to never-ending meritless lawsuits against all card rooms, including the bicycle casino. Specifically, the PAGA provision would allow for anyone to be able to sue card rooms and their customers for anything they believe is legally questionable or which they assert to be illegal gambling. That is a power that is currently limited to and within the sole jurisdiction of the Attorney General of the state of California. Tribal casinos have a history of unsuccessfully challenging the legality of local card rooms. Now they are attempting to exploit the Private Attorneys General Act to allow a nonstop, and in fact, encourage a nonstop barrage of lawsuits against these legal gambling businesses. If this measure passes, the card room industry expects to spend countless funds litigating the legality of established games and approved operational practices. This measure is at best a thinly veiled attack on local card rooms, which are a significant source of revenue and economic activity for local governments and a source of jobs for local communities. Bell Gardens is not alone in facing this threat. Over 80 cities in California have card rooms operating within their jurisdictions, and like Bell Gardens, rely on their card rooms for general fund revenues, and countless neighboring cities and communities also rely on card rooms as employment engines for their direct and indirect employees and residents. This city council knows better than anyone that if city revenues are reduced, the result would be reductions in city staffing and critical city services. Some conservative estimates suggest that local communities will lose more than 32,000 good-paying jobs that generate approximately $1.6 billion in wages annually, and will result in a loss of approximately $500 million in local tax revenue statewide. Let me be clear. Moments ago, I said this measure will result in never-ending lawsuits and a nonstop barrage of lawsuits. The lawsuits will definitely eventually stop, but only when all of the card rooms are driven out of business by endless, meritless litigation. With that, I urge you to adopt the resolution before you, Resolution 2022-05, affirming this city's opposition to the California Legalized Sports Betting on American Indian Lands initiative. Thank you for your time.
That concludes public comment, Mayor.
If there is an objection by the city council, I will close public participation. City manager, will you please give your report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Polito. I would just like to start by making an announcement to recognize and say thank you to Rosanna Danto. She's been our Recreation Community Services Director since November of 2019, so just prior to the COVID pandemic. As part of when Roseanne came on board, we talked about one of the areas of focus being the expectation to build up and improve the community services side of recreation and community services. In addition to looking at the physical facilities that were available as well, improvements that would be needed there as well. And just briefly, since that time, hundreds of thousands of meals have been provided. There's been opening and staffing of the Community Family Services Center, COVID vaccines, COVID testing, rental assistance processing and marketing. In addition, on the physical asset side of things, she's laid the groundwork for the Aquatic Center completion, $4 million in Prop 68 improvements that are going to be forthcoming at Veterans Park, replacement of artificial turf at the soccer fields. And just recently, we've received notifications that we've got some competitive grant monies, almost $1 million for Marlowe Park improvements as well. So I'd just like to take the time to just say thank you to Roseanne and recognize all of these efforts, especially during the COVID environment. I think the city in the Recreation Community Services Department did a lot of things that other cities didn't do. We were able to keep our staff working, keep providing the constant services to the residents, improved services, additional services that we have never provided for. And, frankly, I can give an example of even that I didn't think we would be able to provide in the case of hundreds of thousands of meals. I remember talking with Roseanne and expressing, my thoughts that was difficult to do without food handler cards, no refrigerators, no experience in providing this kind of services. And here we are, probably close to 500,000 meals provided later. So I'd just like to acknowledge and say thanks to Roseanne for all of that effort as she moves on at the end of this week and goes back into a re-retirement. So thank you, Rosanna. It's very, very appreciated. I'd also just like to say also as a goodbye, also say a welcome to Liz Nava. So Roseanne has graciously stayed on here for a couple of weeks and is working with the new Recreation Community Services Director, Liz Nava. Liz is joining us from the city of Norwalk. She started with us last week and has been familiarizing herself with the department, with the staff, with stakeholders. So everybody here will be meeting with Liz. If they haven't already met with her through an ad hoc committee, we'll get some meetings scheduled here shortly. Just briefly, Liz, as I mentioned, joins us from the city of Norwalk. She was there about 14 years, really moved up the ladder from a coordinator to a supervisor, to an analyst, to the superintendent, to the acting director for the last year and a half. So we're happy to welcome her here as the new Director of Recreation Community Services. And the last thing that I would just like to say, The city did put out notice to the residents that we were able to provide KN95 masks at any of the city physical facilities. So whether that be Public Works, Police Department, City Hall, Veterans Park, Ford Park, Neighborhood Youth Center. If residents need masks, they can come in and we'll provide recommended up to 20 per household while supplies last. And I think at this point, we've given out somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 2,000 masks. So we're going to shift inventory around to where the need is greatest, but we'll put additional social media out. So I think that will help get ahead of any potential future curve. The last thing to say is just as far as COVID goes, the case loads down from LA County having 45,000 cases per day at the high down to now just under 5,000 cases per day. So I think this is time that we'll also renew our focus on the vaccination side of things to stop any future surge from reaching the levels that the last one did. So thank you, Mayor Polito and Council.
We will now move to the consent calendar. Does any member of the City Council wish to pull an item for separate discussion? May I have a motion to approve items 3 to 15 on the consent calendar?
I'll
Motion
move.
to approve. Is there a second? Motion was made by Councilmember Flores.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Flores and a second by Councilmember Barcena. City Clerk, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Yes.
and Mayor Polito.
Yes. City Manager, will you please announce discussion item number 16?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Polito. This item is a follow-up to the last council meetings of appointments for external committees and commissions. There is the LA County City Selection Committee and the Southern California Association of Governments. We do not currently have alternates for either of those committees. And also just make a note, within the body of the staff report, we reference the Southeast California Association of Governments. As the title states, it's actually the Southern California Association of Governments. So I think the Mayor Pro Tem had asked for clarification on that. So at this time, the council would be free to make appointments to alternates. And so we'd have to answer any questions. Thank you, Mayor.
May I have a motion to appoint someone as the alternate for the LA County City Selection Committee? Who's the delegate now?
Jane, will you state primary for Southern California Association of Government and the primary for the LA County Selection Committee?
They're both alternates, City Manager. Did you want to know who the primary is?
Yeah.
Okay, one moment. Okay, for the LA County City Selection Committee, the primary is the mayor. And then for the SCAG, primary is Councilmember Corhell.
My apologies. Who are the alternates for each?
Oh, who were the alternates previously?
There's none. Okay.
There are currently no alternates.
Okay, so we need a motion to appoint an alternate to the Los Angeles County City Selection Committee. Do we have any motions or appointments on the floor? I will nominate Councilmember Cortez to be the alternate for the Los Angeles County City Selection Committee. Is there a second?
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
City Clerk, will you please conduct this roll call vote?
Councilmember Sparcena,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Yes.
and Mayor Polito.
Yes. May I have a motion to appoint an alternate to the Southeast California Association of Governments Committee? I would like to make a motion to appoint Councilmember Flores as the alternate for SCAG.
I'll go ahead and second that.
City Clerk, can you please conduct a roll call vote?
Councilmember Sparcena,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Yes.
and Mayor Polito.
Yes. City Clerk, City Manager, will you please announce discussion item number 17?
Yes, thanks again, Mayor Polito. The next one is an Aquatic Center project update. As the council is aware, there is an Aquatic Center ad hoc committee made up of council members Barcena and Cortez. We meet on a regular basis as progress moves forward, and there was a request from the council and also through the ad hoc committee to provide an update to the city council regarding the progress of the Aquatic Center. So I will turn it over to Rosanna Danto, the outgoing Recreation Community Services Director, and the Director of Public Works, Grisel Chavez.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The report before you, I'll keep it very brief. We're about 80% of the architectural and engineering will be complete by the end of February. And we will be submitting plans and specifications to the LA County Health Department. We've spoken to staff from Supervisor Han's office to assist us with expediting the process. The city engineer has reviewed all of the demolition plans, and we are preparing the request for proposals to go out to bid, which will take place at the next council meeting. And so with us, what we have today is an update on some of the slides and some of the features, and I'll go through those. So the first slide is the building front view with landscape. So you can see the entrance to the aquatic facility, which will also include signage and some area for parking. Next slide, Grisel. Again, this is the elements of the Aquatic Center. There's a 50-meter pool. There's a therapy pool. And those are just an overview of those main sites. Next slide. Here's the activity pool, which would also accommodate lessons, more for tiny tots. But you see the slide, you see the 50-meter pool. You see some seniors lounging, so I might come back and swim there too. But anyways, so next slide. Here are some of the transaction windows, so you can see how the interior of the facility will look. So if we have residents who come to the facility, there's windows on the outside as well as on the inside, so whichever they prefer to access staff. Next slide, please. Here are the locker rooms. We've also taken into consideration COVID. So we're looking at the amenities for the restrooms to be able to be touchless. So you can access water, access soap, and a hand dryer all in the same place instead of getting your hands wet and walking over and spilling water all over the site. But the lockers will all have different sizes. So it'll assist in accommodating residents. If you're a single swimmer or if you're a mom and you're bringing a couple of kids with you and you have a larger bag, you'll be able to fit your gear in one of the bags. There's changing tables in each of the restroom facilities, as well as the individual family restrooms that are located out on the deck. Next slide. Here's a view of the fitness room and the type of flooring that will go into the fitness room, which is also adjacent to, and attached to the facility. The breezeway on the outside of the facility will also have lockers. Sometimes children, when they come, maybe they're on their own and all they have is a small towel, some flip-flops. They don't need a larger locker. So these are usually about a foot by foot in diameter. Next slide. Again, the terrace seating is all being designed so that the city can conduct any types of award ceremonies, possibly maybe a type of show. So you'll have natural seating on the terrace. Next. And here's a complete aerial view of the aquatic facility and what that will look like in the coming year. Next. I'll let Grizel tag team on this portion of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne. So follow up to the comments Roseanne made. So the monthly updates will continue to be shared with the Aquatic Center Ad Hoc Committee. The next council meeting will have the authorization to bid for the demolition, first phase demolition. If the timeline goes to plan and the funding is secured and grant requirements are in place, we would like to award in April. And so that'll be part of the timeline on the next slide I'll go over. So that will be delayed if there aren't approvals given by the respective funding agency through CDBG or the grant agency. The next step also to pursue the Section 108 loan for council consideration is holding a public hearing. And again, we're hoping that could be done at our meeting in March. I know there's only one meeting, so it would be scheduled for that March 14th meeting, and we're working with finance and community development to get the processes in place for that. And again, as Roseanne noted, we will work with LA County through our supervisor's office to expedite the county turnaround of the plan check that's submitted to the building and safety and the health departments to get their comments back to be able to finalize the construction plans and drawings to go out to bid for that. So at this point, we still haven't received the notice to proceed from the National Park Service, whom is responsible for the overseeing agency for the $6 million land and water grant. We're hoping that we can receive that by April. Again, those are some of the delays that would be outside of the city's control, is any holdups from the grant agency itself not allowing us to move forward, or any other requirements through the funding source to be able to go out to bid on any of the phases, demolition or construction. So if you look at the timeline, the next slide here, and the costs, we're estimating this is a very fast moving schedule. We've cut back some time to try to expedite and get the pool up and built by next summer. But again, as noted that earlier, the delays, there could be delays to this coming from the funding source and the grant, but we're estimating demolition of pool could be done by July at a cost of about $1.1 million. The new Aquatic Center at a cost of approximately $18 million, that's construction alone, could be done by next July 2023. The soft costs that are ongoing relating to the architect, engineering, the upcoming project, construction management firms, the materials testing inspection firms, et cetera, all those additional costs that are needed to support and allow for the construction would be about $3.6 million for a total project cost estimated at $22.7 million, with the actual cost being known once the bids processes are complete. Funding sources here, we have the $6 million grant and the balance that we would be pursuing through a CDBG Section 108 loan that would be coming forth before council at an upcoming meeting, again, possibly on March 14th. So that concludes my part of the presentation. Both Roseanne and I are available to answer any questions. And at this point, it would just be a receive and file action item from the council. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments?
If I may, I'd like to go ahead and add a comment here. First of all, good job, ladies. I asked for this to come on the agenda because I've been reviewing some of our warrants and really haven't seen anything that's geared towards the pool, which I thought was a little alarming, but I'm glad to see the reasoning behind it. There's obviously some delay outside of our control, but if you can please, I know you guys are doing the best you can as far as expediting, but if there's any way that we can help as far as pushing any of the electeds or anybody at the, grant levels. I think you said it was from the, where's the grant coming from?
National Park Service.
From National Park Services. So if you need us to write a letter or call somebody over there, whatever it is that you guys need, please keep us informed so that, we can get the process moving as quickly as possible. And thank you, Roseanne, and thank you, Crystal. I know that you guys have been working in collaboration with this, so that's all for me. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll go ahead and make a comment.
Okay.
Thank you for that. First off, I appreciate the update. It's always good to hear about the pool and the development that's happening. I think the last time I have heard anything about the pool was with the groundbreaking ceremony, and I think that was late last year. So I'm glad to see the new renderings. And I believe the last time also they didn't have like in-depth in terms of like the fitness room, the locker room, and now we could actually have an idea of what that's going to be like. So I'm glad to see that. And then I was also going to mention one more thing. Oh, is this also like available online on social media and stuff so people can see it? Like the rendering of images and stuff?
If I can answer that, we've spoken to the architects and to staff and to Hylas that we're going to create a, I don't know, would it be a separate web page or an attachment where they can keep up on what's going on? Is it a page? Yeah, it would be a separate page.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. The only reason I asked is because a lot of times, the pool is definitely a topic of interest for our community. So, yeah, it's always good to know what's the status on it. And now it says completion. The new Aquatic Center, I guess the grand opening will probably be in July or August 2023. So now that's what I'm going to tell residents. It's going to be open July or August 2023. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
I'll have a comment too. I just want to thank everyone that's been working on this project. As the rest of the council here, I am very concerned and really always trying to push for this project to be completed as soon as possible. However, there are a lot of moving parts that are involved in this project. And, it requires a lot of patience from the entire council and staff. But I do want to thank staff for always figuring out the best way to get this moving as quickly as possible. So I do appreciate that. And just like you guys, I am looking forward to seeing the demolition of the pool as soon as possible. I know that we had a little taste of it earlier, but as we move forward, I think that's one thing that will definitely set the pace for the rest of the project. So thanks again to staff, and thank you to the council for continuing to support this project.
So just to clarify, the funding that we actually have for it is 6 million out of the 22.7 million project, right? Okay.
Secured. We also have some CDBG funding that has funded the architectural, which is part of the city's annual allocation. So, which is approximately about $1 million.
Okay. So we have 7 million out of the 22.7.
That is correct.
In regards to the timeline and completion, is it July 2023? Yes. Did we allow for any buffer space in regards to like, what if we get a really rainy month in the year, or if COVID kind of gets out of control again?
There is a contingency, but it is a very aggressive construction. So again, there are some variables, and you are correct. If there's significant rain, we will have some setbacks.
So realistically speaking, we're looking into late 2023, if not early 2024.
I don't think it'll get to 2024.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I had one other thing, and I forgot to ask.
Go ahead.
And this might be a little bit tailored to Grisel in terms of public works. In the beginning or earlier in the stages, I had made a couple of requests or recommendations for us to look into, like the parking lots and the condition that they were. I believe also in previous meetings, specifically commission, we talked about speeding on certain streets right there, right in front of the park. And I believe what had come out was police was going to be investing into getting one of those traffic safety monitoring systems to
The speed trailer.
vehicles. So I'm curious to know if, while in the meantime, the pool is also, obviously, while the pool's being done, we got big rigs coming in back and forth. Are we going to be keeping track, or is the development for everything around also going to be happening? If we're going to relocate the public works yard from one side of the park to the other side, is this also happening or are we tackling each project at a time? I'm curious about that. And also the playground that's going to be renovated too. Yeah, I'm curious if this is going to be happening before, during the same time, or is this just a separate conversation? I'm curious.
Yes, you are correct, Councilmember Chavez. I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Chavez. Those are activities that will be happening simultaneously. Not mentioned here because we're focusing on the Aquatic Center, but the relocation of the yard, the playground replacement, the new restroom building would be brought forward for council review and approval once we secure the funding, once we got the plans ready to go out to bid. But those activities are still going to be happening simultaneously, and we'll continue to work with our police department for any change in traffic patterns that may result, more concerns brought forward by residents or through our own police department that might observe for any traffic engineering action that may be necessary to address those, however temporary they are, and then as well as long-term impacts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also, Mayor Pro Tem, the parking lot on the west is going to be done as part of the Cistern project. The parking lot on the east is done as part of the Aquatic Center because of the access. So eventually, that whole park will be an entirely different park.
That's awesome. New parking lots, new everything, new equipment, yeah, I mean, can't get any better than that.
If I may add to that, Mayor Pro Tem Chavez, one of the big factors is having all the pieces of the puzzle kind of working together, and the approval of the county is one of those pieces of the puzzle. So we're also depending a lot on when these permits get approved. And as Council Member Flores mentioned, there is some work for us as council members to do there so that we can be supportive and kind of push a little bit harder to get these permits and all the requirements through the system so that we can actually start getting the work on the ground. So, I look forward to working with all of you on those efforts, and I think it will really make a difference once we get there.
If there are no further questions or comments, may I have a motion?
I believe someone made a motion. I'll go ahead and second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Flores and a second by Councilmember Barcena. City Clerk, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Council members Barcena,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez,
Yes.
and Mayor Polito.
Yes. We will now take a 10-minute recess to allow for an interpreter to take her break, and we will reconvene at 8:06.
That's okay. No, it's okay.
I just wanted to see if I could get my Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I'll find out. Yeah, I don't know if there's something. Yeah, let me find out, because here I can.
Yeah, I mean, speak up, no?
Yeah, let me know.
And it's been like my dad watches my house. That's how long
We're back. Public participation is now open for items not listed on the agenda. City Clerk, please announce the instructions for public participation.
Okay, we have one written comment that has been submitted. The members of the public will now have the opportunity to speak on items not listed on the agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the mayor and council members. Each speaker and written comment is limited to 3 minutes. Written comments will be read out loud after all speakers have been heard. Anyone wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by pressing *9. When instructed, press *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. I will begin with the first speaker. Host, can you please unmute Joanna, PHP?
Buenas tardes, concilio. Somos residentes inquilinas que formamos parte del grupo comunitario Unión de Oficinas de Bell Gardens. Entregamos este comentario público para dirigirnos en particular a la concejal Alejandra Cortés y a la alcaldesa María Pulido. Primeramente, les queremos dar las gracias por todo lo que hacen por la comunidad de Bell Gardens. Entendemos que el papel de ustedes no es fácil y requiere mucho trabajo y tiempo. Nos dirigimos a ustedes hoy por este medio porque nos gustaría platicar con ustedes como hemos hecho con los otros concejales acerca de las metas de nuestro grupo y las necesidades urgentes de muchos inquilinos en su comunidad. Les hemos dejado recados desde el año pasado, pero hasta ahora no hemos recibido ninguna respuesta. Esta pandemia ha afectado profundamente a las comunidades en el sureste de Los Ángeles y la crisis de vivienda nos pega especialmente fuerte a las mujeres y a los niños, quienes somos los que más sufrimos de desalojos. Es importante que cada miembro del concilio nos escuche por su compromiso y responsabilidad hacia la comunidad. Con mucho respeto les pedimos que por favor contesten nuestras solicitudes para reunirnos con ustedes y platicar sobre este tema, ya que se está organizando el segundo taller para informar a la comunidad de las recomendaciones de leyes que hemos compartido con el ad hoc de control de rentas. Es fundamental que tengamos la oportunidad de hablar directamente con ustedes, nuestros representantes. Esperamos su respuesta. Muchas gracias de parte de Silvia Hernández, María Padilla, José Barrios, Mónica Kakimoto, Yolanda Jiménez, María López, Joana Venegas, Humberto Lizárraga, Lucía Veloz, Linda Molina, María Ramírez, El Rodríguez, Sandra García y Emily Nava, y todos los miembros de la Unión de Vecinas. Gracias.
She's the only, she was the one that submitted the written comments. Gracias, señora. So the translator can just translate the verbiage. Samantha can
Yeah.
translate.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? This is the interpreter. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was the same person that submitted the written comments. She just read it.
Can you all hear me? Can anybody hear me? Let me try it this way.
Hi, Samantha. This is Hylas. The last caller was the person that submitted the written comment. So you could just translate the written comment into English on the English line, please.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
They'll be able to hear you.
Okay. Let me know when you all can hear me, or whoever needs to hear me.
We can all hear you now.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, good evening, council. We are residents and tenants who make up the community group Unión de Vecinas de Bell Gardens, Union of Bell Gardens. We are submitting this public comment to address specifically Councilwoman Alejandra Cortez and Mayor Maria Pulido. First of all, we would like to thank you both for everything that you do for the community of Bell Gardens. We understand that your role is not easy and requires a lot of work and time. We are addressing you all today through this comment because we would like to speak with you, as we have with other council members, regarding the goals of our group and the urgent needs of many tenants, renters in your community. We have left messages since last year, but so far have not received any answer. This pandemic has profoundly affected the communities in Southeast Los Angeles, and the housing crisis hits women and children especially hard. We are the ones who suffer the most from evictions. It's important that every member of the council listen to us because of your commitment and your responsibility toward the community. With much respect, we ask you to please answer our requests to meet with you and speak about this subject. Since the second community workshop is being organized to inform the community of the recommendations for an ordinance that we have shared with the Rent Control Ad Hoc Committee, it is essential that we have the opportunity to speak directly with you all, our representatives. We await your reply. Thank you very much. Sincerely, Silvia Hernandez, Maria Padilla, Jose Barrios, Mónica Kakimoto, Yolanda Jiménez, María López, Joana Venegas, Humberto Lizárraga, Lucia Veloz, Linda Molina, María Ramírez, Eli Rodríguez, Sandra Garcia, Emily Nava, and all the rest of the members of Unión de Vecinas de Bell Gardens. That concludes the comment.
If there is no objection by the city council, I will close public participation. We will now move to council member comments. Councilmember Bárcena.
Ahora pasamos a los
los comentarios de los concejales. Concejal Bárcena, sí, yo tengo una sugerencia para futuras traducciones. Quisiera sugerir que cuando hay un comentario en español o tal vez un correo electrónico, si la traductora, por favor, puede ir traduciendo mientras que hable la persona para no tener que esperar. Si podemos hacerlo simultáneamente. No sé si eso se permite legalmente, pero los abogados pueden comentar, pero creo que eso puede ayudar para los que están escuchando. Si no conocen lo de Zoom o tal vez estén en la página Facebook, tal vez no sepan qué es lo que está pasando. Así que cuanto más podamos explicar cómo estamos haciendo con los comentarios, especialmente en español, ayudaría mucho. Ese es mi comentario sobre eso. Quiero tomar un momento para realmente agradecerle a la directora Rosana Danto de Recreo y Servicios Comunitarios por sus servicios aquí en la ciudad de Bell Gardens. Ella hizo una gran diferencia en nuestra comunidad. Sé que
the leaps that she made with our department. And I think I have an advantage over that perspective just because I was in the department, basically my entire life, working from a lifeguard to a recreation leader 1, all the way to 2, 3, 4, and then also as an administrative specialist. I have seen firsthand the difference that it has made. We basically went from having a minimal community services department to having an extremely robust and competitive recreation and community services department in a time when it was the most needed during the pandemic. And I don't really need to say this. I'm honestly just saying it because from the bottom of my heart, I feel that our community deserved the change and we got the change. And it's up to us to continue to make these positive things happen. And I think Rosana Danto really set the pace for us. So I appreciate it. And from here on, I feel like we can continue to do better. So I'm very excited and also happy to welcome our new Recreation and Community Services Director, Liz Nava. We're very happy to have you here. I think Roseanne is really someone that has done great things, but we believe that you can also continue that and maybe even go beyond. So we really appreciate Roseanne's work and we look forward to seeing you work here, Liz. And that concludes my comment. Thank you.
Councilwoman Flores?
Yes, I want to give direction for one item. I spoke to some high school students over the weekend, and they mentioned that they don't feel safe walking home to Habaneria because of lighting issues. They exit the school and they have to walk exiting the football gate all the way down into Bell Gardens Elementary. And they say that during the first half from Gage to Florence, there's very limited lighting and they often get scared. Cars are speeding. So we can please pay attention to that area and see how we can help these students make their way home safely. And then moving forward, I just want to piggyback off my colleague and thank Roseanne for her time here in Bell Gardens. When I got elected here a few years ago, 3 years ago, one of the biggest issues we had was our Parks and Rec department that needed a lot of help. And, it was full of turbulence. And I have to say that the turbulence continued once you were here, but it had nothing to do with you, but more to do so with the pandemic that the entire world was dealing with. So I just want to thank you for what you've done. I've called you on your personal cell phone after hours to help house homeless women and families, just certain issues that I feel that you definitely made a difference in our Bell Gardens residents' lives. And I want to thank you for that and tell you that I wish you the best in whatever endeavors that you will embark. I know that you will do phenomenal because it is in your personality to, take life by the wheel. So congratulations, Roseanne, and I wish you well. And on that note, welcome, Mrs. Nava. You have big shoes to fill, and we are looking forward to opening up our new swimming pool under your supervision. Thank you. Oh, and happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Mayor Pro Tem Chavez.
Thank you for that. So just briefly, I just want to give a huge shout out to all the high school students that are in CIF at the moment, keeping tabs on everybody. Basketball team is just killing it, knocking out of the park. They advanced to the second round. Soccer team did as well. The female basketball team as well has just been doing phenomenal. So huge shout out to our athletes, really putting BG on the map, right? And making a statement. So I look forward to going to the next couple of games by my colleagues to also show up and support. That's our alma mater, and we got to come out. So it'd be great. With that said, hope everyone has a great night. Stay safe and happy Valentine's. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Roseanne. Coming back into council, I did notice big changes with our Parks and Recs department, but I was really impressed by the way that you were planning all these huge events in collaboration with multiple departments to make sure that our residents had food, resources. The holidays didn't disappear because of you. Our children were able to still see Santa Claus and have toys. So we were very fortunate to have you here. And I want to thank you for that. I think that you became part of our family. And in the short period that you were here, you did a lot of greatness. Elizabeth does have Liz. I don't know you that well yet, so Elizabeth will be has huge shoes to fill. I heard really good reviews about you, but I think that there's a lot that Roseanne still had planned and had started, and you'll have the pleasure of completing them and planning on after that. I'm sure that your family is going to enjoy your presence at home. You get to relax and create new projects, and it's Valentine's Day and we're here because we wanted to spend it with you. And thank you for everything that you did. Emmanuel's working, but that's besides the point. I'm here because of you. Thank you so much for everything that you did, and you have friends here. You're welcome to come and visit us, and once we have the pool opening, we'll invite you so that you can be part of that experience as well. And with that, I will...
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Oh, yes. Oh, wait.
I like to request that we adjourn the meeting in memory of my father, Celso Bárcena, who passed away last month. And in addition to that, I would also like to thank staff and the community, because over the last few months, it's been extremely hard for me taking care of my dad, and staff and the community has always been very attentive, always asking how my dad was doing. And I really, really appreciate that at a personal level. So I want to thank each and every one of you that showed that compassion for me during that time. And he's now resting in peace. And I'd like to just ask for a moment of silence. He did participate in local government to some extent. He was a commissioner. So I know some of the staff that's been here for longer, they actually got to work with him and they know him. And he was someone that sometimes people come up to me and they ask me how my dad is doing, and I don't even know who they are, because my dad was really that type of person that showed a lot of interest in helping others. And for example, some of the members of the neighborhood watch, went up to me and they told me that they were praying for him and that they knew him, and I had no idea about that. So I really appreciate all the support that came from the community, including staff. And I really want to thank you for that and ask for a moment of silence for my dad, Celso Bárcena, who lived here in Bell Gardens for many, many years. and love the community.
Yes, we'll do that. Roseanne, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say it's been an honor and a privilege to have served here at the City of Bell Gardens. It's been a lot of hard work, but at the end of the day, I think the department did good work as a team, and it was all about serving the community. So I just wanted to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to serve and to just be part of the Bell Gardens family. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne.
And I know that the chief is dying to say a few comments to Roseanne. I saw it in your face.
You saw it in half of my face. Yeah, on behalf of the police department and the men and women of the Bell Gardens Police Department, we appreciate all you did for this community, for the youth of this community, and for allowing us to participate in many of those events and always supporting the folks at the police department. So thank you very much. Enjoy the promised land. And this time, stay in the promised land, and life is short, and enjoy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And with that, I would like to call a moment of silence in memory of Celso Bárcena, who was an amazing father, as we can see, because of the amazing son that he raised in our council member Bárcena. If there is no objection by the city council, I will now adjourn the meeting at 8:28 p.m.